As a way to celebrate and remember Kobe on his birthday, I wanted to make a list about his career, but so much of his career has been well documented and most of his legendary moments we already know all about. So as one of the ultimate Kobe superfans, I thought hard, and I tried to make a list of some of the most interesting and lesser known details about the Mamba. I'm curious about how many of these 8 things you already knew, so let me know in a comment when the video is done. Here's 8 rarely known facts about Kobe Bryant. Number 1. He claimed he could be the best point guard. In the 2012 to 2013 season, Kobe was 34 years old and was in his 17th season in the league. And this would be his last season as an MVP caliber player that we all remember famously ended with the Achilles tear. I've gone on in past videos about how incredibly impressive this season was. But one thing I haven't yet mentioned is about his small stretch of games where he played primarily as a facilitator. It was January in a 3-game home stretch against Utah, Oklahoma City, and New Orleans. And in those games, he put up stat lines of 14 points, 14 assists, 9 rebounds, then 21 points, 14 assists, 9 rebounds, and then 14 points, 11 assists, and 8 rebounds. A more selective Kobe shot 59% from the field over that stretch, and the Lakers won all 3 games. In the post-game interview of the 3rd game, Kobe was asked many questions about his newfound love of facilitating, and Kobe gave credit to his childhood idol, Magic Johnson. When asked how he would do if he focused all of his energy on being a point guard for an entire season, Kobe responded with this.
What you think I'm gonna say? I wasn't gonna be the best.
Number 2. Kobe turned down a scoring crown. Heading into the Lakers' final regular season game of the 2011-2012 season, a 23-year-old Kevin Durant and a 33-year-old Kobe Bryant were sitting atop the rest of the league as scorers. Durant was averaging 28 points per game and Kobe was averaging 27.8. He would need just 38 points to take the scoring championship away from Durant. The Thunder had no regular season games left to be played, but it appeared that Kobe had one more opportunity to take the crown as his own. It would be in Sacramento against a terrible Kings team that Kobe averaged 33.5 points against that season. So if he really went for it, 38 points is theoretically something that the Mamba could have easily accomplished. The thing is, the Lakers were already locked into the 3rd seed of the Western Conference, and the difference between a win and loss in Sacramento was completely meaningless from a team perspective. When asked about the scoring title, Kobe said, "It's not very important. San Antonio was playing me single coverage yesterday. If it was important to me, I would have gone for 50 yesterday." So when given the opportunity, Kobe sat out the game against Sacramento to instead rest and prepare himself for the playoffs. People have said this to me before, but if anyone ever says Kobe's desires for stats and personal accolades were stronger than his desire to win, then please point them to this game. Number 3. At a time, Kobe was planning to join forces with Michael Jordan on the Wizards. When Michael Jordan returned to play basketball with the Wizards, he was doing it at a time where he was also the team's president of basketball operations. During his 2 seasons playing with the Wizards, there were ongoing private conversations between Kobe and Jordan. Kobe was frustrated playing alongside of Shaquille O'Neal for many well-documented reasons that I'm sure most of you are aware of. Kobe's free agency was approaching in 2004, and that would be the time for him to head to Washington. But Jordan was no longer playing at that point, and it was assumed by pretty much everyone, including Jordan, that when he was done playing with the Wizards, he would assume his role as the team's president of basketball operations. But that's when the plan fell through, as the Wizards owner Abe Pollin fired Jordan in May of 2003. When asked if the rumor was true that he planned on joining Jordan in Washington, Kobe said, "That's true. I've always been big on having mentors. Being around guys who have done it before and done it at a high level. I always tried to pick their brains and absorb knowledge. Obviously, being in that situation, it would have helped having to be around him every day and so on. We would have put together a great team, and we would have won championships." Looking back on it, this is definitely one of the more interesting what-if scenarios for the career of both Kobe and Jordan. Number 4. Kobe was actually booed at Staples Center. This one requires a little bit more context. The Laker fans were in a different headspace in the mid-2000s. After the departure of Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe had a terrible supporting cast, and in the next several seasons, Kobe was either missing the playoffs or getting bounced in the first round, despite the fact that he was leading the league in scoring. Many of us Laker fans were beginning to question if Kobe could win a championship for us without Shaq, and Kobe was starting to doubt as well. After being eliminated from the playoffs for the 2nd straight year to the Phoenix Suns, the Mamba took his frustration to the media and publicly demanded a trade in the summer of 2007. This started a whirlwind of rumors and a stressful offseason for Laker fans. At any moment, we were expecting news to break that Kobe had been traded to the Bulls like he wanted. Despite Kobe's demands, management refused to trade Kobe. This brought us to October 30th, 2007. It was opening night against the Houston Rockets, and Kobe gets booed by the Staples Center crowd at his introduction and in his first few possessions when touching the basketball. It was a surreal sight considering everything Kobe had already accomplished for that crowd. Kobe then had a legendary performance in a thrilling game and dropped 45 points. The funniest part was that in just 2 hours after the crowd was booing him, that same Laker crowd was then chanting his name at the free throw line.
Half minute to play here in the third quarter.
Lakers ultimately lose the game by 2 points. They land Pau Gasol in a trade a couple months later, and the rest is history. Number 5. Kobe tried out for the Celtics and was nearly drafted by them. Kobe was a young and exciting prospect heading into the NBA, but as a 17-year-old, the expectations of him were far from being as high as several other rookies coming into the league. The Celtics then asked a high school version of Kobe to come in for a workout. As a lifelong Lakers fan, Kobe certainly wasn't comfortable sporting the Celtic green, and said years later that he really didn't want to put the uniform on. Unsurprisingly, everyone in the Celtics organization was impressed with his skills and abilities. The head coach of the Celtics, M.L. Carr, said, "I'm telling you, he put on a shooting exhibition the way he stroked the ball." Carr was also impressed with Kobe's knowledge and appreciation for Celtics history, saying, "He said all the right things. He sounded like a Celtic." Celtics general manager at the time, Jan Volk, said, "If you closed your eyes and thought a little bit, you might have thought you were watching Michael Jordan." With praise like that, it would seem like a foregone conclusion that the Celtics would draft Kobe. But with that being said, the Boston Celtics own the 9th overall pick in the draft, which they almost certainly would have used to take Kobe. But the '96 draft was loaded with talent, and there were 6 players with lots of hype surrounding them, known as the Super Six of '96. They were Allen Iverson, Marcus Camby, Ray Allen, Antoine Walker, Sharif Abdul-Rahim, and Stephon Marbury. It was assumed that if you had a top 6 pick, you couldn't pass these guys up. The Celtics managed to pull off a trade to move up from the 9th pick to the 6th pick, which they then used to select the 6'8" Antoine Walker. A great player, but he isn't Kobe, and the Celtics involved are still regretting that decision to this day. When asked how Kobe would have responded if the Celtics had drafted him, he said, "I would have tried to carry on Bird's legacy. Absolutely. I would have done it with a tremendous amount of pride and honor." Number 6. Kobe got MVP chance in Boston. Not much backstory to this one. It seemed as if it was just a regular night in Boston in early 2007. Well, Kobe was doing Kobe things that evening, hitting some of the most absurd, difficult, and highlight-worthy shots, I would say, of his career, but these were pretty standard in his prime, let's be honest. The game is getting out of hand for the Celtics, and it's Kobe that's closing it out. After each incredible basket, the crowd grows louder and louder, as there's pretty much nothing to root for besides Kobe at a certain point. He then caps off his night with an insanely difficult three-pointer that basically only he can hit regularly. It was his 43rd point, and that triggered this unthinkable event.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
right, in Boston. Of all places.
Are you kidding me? I know Red Auerbach is rolling over.
Number 7. Kobe was actually outplayed in his first 50-point game. It's December of the 2000 to 2001 season. Kobe is just now starting to assert himself as one of the elite scorers of the NBA, as he took his average from 22.5 points per game to 28.5 this season. The 14-5 Lakers were taking on the 5-13 Warriors in a game they were obviously expected to win. The only significant thing the Lakers defense really had to worry about was that on the other side of the court was Antawn Jamison, who was coming off of a 51-point and 14-rebound performance against the Supersonics. What ensued was one of the most epic solo duels of Kobe's career, as both stars were trading baskets back and forth throughout the game. Kobe was on fire and was having probably the best game of his career up to that point, but Jamison was enjoying an encore performance from a few nights prior. The game eventually went to overtime and it came down to the final possession. Kobe shot a difficult three and missed wide right, and the Warriors won the game. Kobe finished with 51 points, 7 rebounds, and 8 assists on 51% shooting, just to be outdone by Jamison's 51 points, 13 rebounds, and 5 assists on 72% shooting. A pretty interesting footnote to two guys who would go on to be future teammates. Number 8. For a while, Kobe listened to Don't Stop Believing every single day. It's the 2008 NBA Finals Game 6, one of the worst memories of any Lakers fan, and Kobe is no exception. The Lakers were destroyed by the rival Celtics by 39 points, sending the Lakers home. Amidst Kobe's tears and amidst the celebration in Boston, playing loudly throughout the stadium was Don't Stop Believing by Journey. For Kobe, the song naturally became attached to the painful memory of falling short to the Celtics and failing to win a championship. So Kobe responded by doing one of the most Mamba mentality things ever and listened to the song every single day leading up to his 2009 championship in order to keep the pain and motivation fresh in his mind. If we do the math, that's 362 straight days of listening to that song and reliving one of your worst experiences. It sounds crazy, but it worked. And this is why we celebrate this legend, because this guy was just wired differently, in such a way that inspires many of us. Let me know in the comments section what is your favorite fact about Kobe. Happy birthday, Mamba. We miss you. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.